I remember it so clearly. Her voice was fragile, filled with emotion, her fingers gliding over the fretboard with speed and dexterity. Her head was bowed throughout, occasionally peering out from beneath a mop of dark hair at the people who had stopped to listen. She was, by any measure of talent, a star, blessed with the ability to command a stadium into silence with nothing more than that guitar and that heavenly voice. But she was playing to an audience of about 15 people on a cold, dark night in Stockholm, trying to make herself heard over the sound of chattering locals and clinking glasses. Why wasn't she famous? Perhaps she didn't have the look that the record labels wanted that year. Perhaps she was 5 years too late for the folk revival, or 10 years too early for the singer-songwriter boom. Or perhaps, most tragically, she just never got to stand in front of the right person at the right time. We walked away saying, she was great, wasn't she? It's a shame they never made it. In the world of demolition and construction equipment, we're surrounded by the stars that did make it. We see the yellow of Caterpillar, the orange of Hitachi, the white of Liebherr. We treat those machines as the inevitable peak of engineering evolution. But any grizzled plant manager or frustrated design engineer will tell you the history of our industry is littered with the mechanical equivalent of that pub singer. Brilliant, game-changing innovations that just never got their break. For every Joe Bamford, a man whose vision for a backhoe loader fundamentally reshaped the global landscape, there's 100 innovators whose names have been bleached from the pages of history or whose ideas never even made it onto paper in the first place. Innovation in our sector is rarely a straight line. It's more like an obstacle course. To move from a good idea in a workshop to a production line reality, an invention must survive an array of challenges. It must be market ready, which often means not so different that it scares the accountants. It needs to fit into shipping containers. It needs to be serviceable by a technician who spent 30 years working on traditional hydraulics. How many ideas for revolutionary demolition attachments were laughed out of offices in the 1980s because they looked too radical? How many hybrid drive systems were proposed in the 90s, only to be shelved because diesel was cheap and the green movement was seen as a fringe distraction? We like to think that the best ideas always rise to the top, but in an industry as capital intensive as ours, the best ideas often lose out to the safest one. Consider the Caterpillar D8. It's a masterpiece of iterative engineering, a machine that's been honed over decades to become the gold standard in its class. But that's exactly what it is. It's an iteration. When we look at a modern demolition site, we see a symphony of loaders, excavators, and crushers, each one significantly more efficient than its predecessor from 20 years ago. They've got GPS, telematics, climate controlled cabs, Tier 4 engines. But at their core, they're doing the same things in the same ways. The excavator digs, the dozer pushes, the crusher grinds. We have, it seems, reached a plateau of refinement. We're perfecting the singer's microphone technique while ignoring the fact that the song itself hasn't changed in more than 50 years. What if in the mid-1970s, a frustrated inventor in a small fabrication shop in the Midlands had solved the problem of continuous demolition, a machine that didn't just bite and drop material, but processed and sorted it in a single fluid motion? And what if their prototype was rejected by a manufacturer because it didn't look like anything else on the market? If just one or two of those misfit ideas had gained traction, the modern job site wouldn't just be faster, it'd be unrecognizable. We might not be talking about excavators at all. We might be talking about a category of machines that currently has no name because it died in a filing cabinet in Peoria or Tokyo. The danger of this tried and tested formula is that it breeds a specific kind of blindness. We've become so accustomed to the limitations of our current fleet that we've stopped seeing them as limitations and started to see them as laws of nature. We accept that a certain amount of downtime is inevitable, that a certain percentage of material waste is just part of the job, and that certain urban demolition projects are impossible without at least some manual labour. But those aren't laws of nature. They're just leftovers of the ideas that survived the vetting process. It's hard to imagine this now, but Joe Bamford was a busker who, through sheer force of will and determination, made it onto the main stage. He took a risk on a form factor that didn't exist. Today, however, the barrier to entry for a new class of machine is higher than ever. The cost of R&D, the stringency of safety regulations, and the sheer momentum of "that's the way we've always done it" act as a silencer for the lone inventor. As we look toward the future, toward automation, electrification, and the circular economy, we're once again looking to the big players to lead us. We expect the next big thing to come from an R&D department with a multi-million pound budget. But history suggests otherwise. The real shifts, the ones that move the needle by miles rather than millimeters, usually start with someone who's just fed up with the status quo. It starts with someone who looks at a dozer and sees not a tool, but a compromise. We're all intimately familiar with our loaders, our graders, and our dump trucks. We know their curves, we know their strengths and their failings. We've watched them grow smarter and sleeker with every passing year. But as we stand on the edge of a new era, we have to ask ourselves, are we just looking at better versions of the same old things? Is it possible that right now, while you're listening to this, the true future of the demolition industry is sitting in the back of a van or is sketched on an oily piece of paper in someone's shed? Is there a whole new class of machine currently being worked and reworked in the brain of a frustrated inventor who just can't get anyone to take him seriously? We're all comfortably familiar with the standard lineup of excavators, loaders, and dozers. Yet there is a very real possibility that they are not the pinnacle of what is possible. They're merely the survivors of the corporate selection process. It's possible there's a whole new category of machines currently locked in the mind of a frustrated inventor. And if there is, the tragedy isn't just that he can't find a stage. It's that we're left struggling with a puzzle that someone has already solved on an oily piece of paper in their shed.